Playing.
GP9s, one of EMD's magnum opuses. As time went on, railroads found ways to expand the life expectancy of these legacy diesels, with many successful rebuilds like the GP9RM, the GP10, and the GP9R to name a few. One of the more obscure rebuilds revolved around 5 GP9s, a horse, and a caterpillar. What? It's 1984, the year that Thomas and Friends debuted, Pittsburgh's light rail opens, and in another universe, the truth is oppressed. Anyways, Norfolk Southern was in a dilemma. With many older first-generation Jeeps being acquired through the merger, they were nearing 30 years of service and being held up by duct tape, chewed-up wires, and dying hopes and dreams. The railroad began evaluating a potential rebuild program for the old Jeeps in an effort to increase their service life, while saving on fuel and maintenance costs. Norfolk Southern would take 5 old N&W GP9s into the pilot program, and the rebuilds were outrolled between 1985 and 1987 at the road's Roanoke shops. Kind of coincidental how all 5 GP9s used were of N&W origins, while being rebuilt at the Norfolk & Western's main hub. For the rebuild, the external appearance of the GP9 was mostly kept intact. The biggest modification though was the replacement of the 567 EMD prime mover with a Caterpillar twin-turbo 12-cylinder 3512 model engine. This type of engine was usually found in machines like the CSD T478s, the John Cabot ship, to these. Yeah, we don't talk about them. Although, the Caterpillar engine would derate the unit's power output from 1,750 horsepower to 1,050 horsepower, so it lost roughly 700 horsepower in return following the new engine. This would make the TC10's horsepower more weaker compared to the GP7s and even older SW designs, but only a teeny bit more powerful compared to Norfolk Southern's lightest switchers, specifically the Alco T6, EMD NW2, and SW1001s that had roughly 1,000 horsepower. Yet the TC10s could outbeat them by only 50 more horsepower! But in spite of what I'm saying, they aren't the weakest locomotives, as that title goes to the SW1s with 600 horsepower, the SW8s with 800 horsepower, and a pair of GP 4.5s, which were rebuilt GP9s with a reduced 975 horsepower. So yeah, the TC10 had some competition of its own.
I'm not just like the rest of you. I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
This new engine resulted in a slight body modification with more boxy mounts where the dynamic brakes would be, as this would house the ventilation and exhaust for the unit, essentially just making them look like more cubic dynamic brakes, if that makes sense. And let's talk about the classification, since they were reclassified as TC10. T for transfer, C for Caterpillar, the manufacturer behind the engine, and the 10 for 1,050 horsepower, albeit this was shortened down. But to sum up, they had a new Caterpillar engine, more boxy dynamic brakes, and some weird classification. so they didn't look any different. The TC10s would find work on yard and transfer service across the Midwestern United States, from the Motor City of Detroit down to Ohio, serving the role as a lighter and slightly more efficient switcher unit for Norfolk Southern. Although as much as the idea for refurbishing older Jeeps was a perfect idea, the TC10s didn't really succeed, seemingly due to the costs of fully rebuilding the remaining GP9s not being desirable in the railroad's favor, and possibly due to the Caterpillar engines being non-standard, seeing as Norfolk Southern was more familiar with EMD and GE products, and by extension the few Alcos that were dying off. With the program being canned, the Caterpillar 9s would quickly become orphans on the roster, and with no future plans for the rebuild program, they lasted a few years on transfer service until retirements would begin, with number 100 going in November 1994, and 104 being the last unit surviving, being retired in February 1998, putting an end to Norfolk Southern's dabble into Caterpillar engines. So, where did they go? Well, based off the information I was able to find, here are the fates as follows. 100 was sold to Peoria Locomotive Works in Illinois, and was likely scrapped. 101 was sold off to Diesel Supply Company in April 1995, then resold to RCAX, where it currently switches out a grain elevator in Wright, Kansas as of 2024. 102 and 103 were sold off to Coastline Rail Services, and each had their own modifications. 102 got the most tamest with a chopped nose, and was used in industrial switching service in Cincinnati around 2004, although as of 2009, they asleep. 103 on the other hand got rebuilt into a... yeah. I refuse to believe this is the same thing as this. 104, despite being the last Caterpillar 9 on the roster, was sold to Cherokee Rail Systems in May 1998 and faded into the void. So, Norfolk Southern's TC10s. What seemed like a promising rebuild towards increasing the service life of older motive power quickly went nowhere and the program was shelved. Regardless, the few survivors of this obscure rebuild still live on in some capacity, whether it's a genset to an industrial switcher in a small corner of the Sunflower State. And regardless of this, these peculiar rebuilds are only a small sample of the various Caterpillar repowers on American rails.